Welcome everyone to the webinar on logistics of COVID and Indian Railways. The webinar is presented and organized by CILT and Vilat India along with Exhibitions India Group. Today we'll be discussing more about logistics during and off COVID, and we have an eminent list of panelists joining us today. To give the opening address, we have Sri Shanti Narayanji, former member Traffic Indian Railways, and he is Chairman CILT India chapter. A keynote address would be delivered by Dr. Monica Agnihotri, DRM Lucknow, Northeastern Railways. Joining another speaker with us is Sri Vinodas Thanaji. He is former MD, CRWC. And our moderator today is Ms. Ragini Yechuri. She is Chairperson, Vilat India. I now request Ragini ma'am to please spearhead and take over the session. And please share the conduct of the session as well. Over to you, Ragini ma'am.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome to the logistics of COVID and Indian Railways. In a diverse country in India's size and population, the need for an efficient and economical logistics system can never be overemphasized. We need to continuously look and relook at our given rules and procedures from time to time, fine-tune them, and continue to join the dots so as to deliver with greater efficiency, resulting in greater customer satisfaction. With the striking of COVID-19 in March 2020 and the numbers continuing to spiral on a daily basis across the country, we need to all come together, not only CILT and Vilat, but also along with the railways, the roadways, the airways, the civil administration, hospitals, and the banking sector. In fact, every gamut of activity required to ease the life of all those living through this crisis. Keeping the Vilat motto of stronger together, I would now invite our respected chairman, Mr. Shanti Narayan, to address us. He is retired as Secretary to the Government of India and Member Traffic of Indian Railways. Given his vast experience and ability to resolve issues, he is the head of a number of committees and advisory boards set up by the Government of India. Mr. Shanti Narayan, sir.
Thank you, Ragini. At the outset, let me extend my own very warm welcome to all our participants. And I believe our international president has he joined us, or he was expected to join and attend our webinar? Is he present or not?
Yes, sir, he's present.
Okay. A very warm welcome to Razak, Mr. Razak. This is a great honor for us that you are also present in this second webinar that we have organized on behalf of CILT India. Well, friends, we are meeting today in the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has affected the global community in a manner which is unprecedented, to say the least. We have lived through nearly 4 months of restrictions which have confined us to our homes and introduced us to a new lifestyle which we could never imagine we would have to live through. However, it has been a life-transforming experience with its ups and downs. The upside has been that we have started enjoying the closeness to the family, something that we had missed all these years without being aware of it, and had gone into a shell of our own making. We have also realized how we can survive with many less wants as opposed to the basic needs. We have also found time to introspect on the rampant materialism that has enveloped our lives and seen the futility of this lifestyle in which we had no time to look at ourselves, at our routine activities, and on the environment. The downside has been the complete reversal of the development process and contraction of the global as well as the national economies, which have brought about unimaginable distress and destitution to large sections of our society. But what I want to share with you today are some of the remarkable responses to the challenges that COVID-19 has posed in the way we have conducted our businesses and lives, particularly in the community of logisticians. We are privileged to have amongst us our two outstanding railwaymen, a railwayman and a railway woman, who have not only come out with new concepts of good governance, but have actually implemented them with aplomb to make a difference in the way we operate our logistics services. The pivotal role that Indian Railways has played in securing the stupendous task of transportation of millions of migrants to their homes in the now famous Shramik specials is now acknowledged worldwide. But I would therefore invite one of our outstanding logisticians, Dr. Monica Agnihotri, who is the Divisional Railway Manager, Northeastern Railway, Lucknow, to share her focus plan to improve the ambience around rail facilities by cleaning up and also undertaking plantations alongside the track as well as the station areas to make rail travel a pleasant experience for our customers. Our other expert from the logistics sector is Mr. Vinod Asthana, who is on the executive committee of CILT India and who has been the originator of the concept of rail-side warehousing on Indian Railways and has brought in technological innovations in the warehousing sector during his stint as CMD of Railway PSUs, which was the Rail-Side Warehousing Corporation. We in CILT India are enthused by the ingenuity of the human intellect and wish to provide a platform to practicing logisticians to share their out-of-the-box ideas and implementation strategies in the logistics industry, which we are confident would transform the logistics and transport sector to serve Indian industry and business with a commitment towards excellence and respond proactively to the genuine needs and aspirations of our esteemed customers and contribute towards providing cost-effective, seamless and green logistics services within the country. Extending once again a very warm welcome to all the participants to this second webinar of CILT India. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for your inspiring words of guidance. I would now request our Vilat member and the keynote speaker for today, Dr. Monica Agnihotri, Divisional Railway Manager of Lucknow Division, who has played a key role in facilitating and ensuring smooth flow of traffic, providing seamless connectivity. She has been able to achieve this by not only running all the arms of the railways under close supervision, but also been in liaison with the civil administration, hospitals, police, and other civic authorities. Dr. Monica Agnihotri.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Ragini ma'am, and thank you very much, Shanti Narayan sir. I would take this opportunity to thank CILT India and Vilat for giving me an opportunity to reach out through this webinar to such an esteemed and august audience today. Thank you very much, and again a very good afternoon. The topic for today is logistics of COVID and Indian Railways. Well, unexpected challenges require unconventional responses and unparalleled efforts. Such has been the case in the global COVID crisis. This epochal adversity has struck us both in terms of severity and suddenness. And before venturing any further into the issue, I would like to first tell you the format which I would be adopting during this course of around 40 minutes which have been slotted to me. I would first like to discuss what is the concept of logistics of COVID, because we have been hearing a lot about the impact of COVID on logistics and COVID itself, logistics issues, the role of Indian Railways and things like that. But I would like to interweave all these concepts and present before you a perspective of the topic for today's webinar, that is the logistics of COVID and Indian Railways. After that, I will give you a few examples to elaborate what is this concept all about, and also the role of Indian Railways during this crisis. And finally, I will come to the interplay of Indian Railways with the logistics of COVID through the examples of Shramik Specials and the isolation coaches or the COVID care coaches. So I would now start off with this, on this note. The COVID pandemic has hit the globe with such a severity and such a suddenness that initially people were not even aware what is this pandemic all about. Frankly speaking, in India, it came a little later, and the Western world, it had already struck earlier after moving on from China. But if you remember, in the months of February, towards the end of February and the beginning of March, it was just reaching India, and there was little awareness. And thereafter, a slew of measures were taken, and then the lockdown was imposed, and the rest is history. So, when we talk of logistics of COVID, we understand that one is the very important medical dimension of the pandemic. We all know what are the symptoms, what are the consequences, how do we propose to contain this pandemic and things like that. But very much hand in hand goes the issue of logistics, because a lot of resources have to be mapped, a lot of stakeholders are involved, mapping all these stakeholders, all the resources, putting them together, assigning responsibilities, and then monitoring the outcomes. So this is no mean job, I would say, at such a large scale, and especially considering the case of India, where we have a large population, and the outreach of this initiative necessitated that each and every nitty-gritty had to be seen in great detail. Then there is the Indian Railways. There is the conventional role which we all know as the lifeline to the nation we have been playing in terms of the passenger business and the freight movement and things like that. But today, when we look back in the last 4 months, what has happened? Indian Railways became an integral part in the entire scheme of things. Whenever we talk of the logistics of COVID, and the logistics of COVID is not just limited to railways. I will just share my examples to explain that further. But at every step, railways had partnered in this concept of logistics of COVID. So now I will explain briefly the logistics of COVID. I'll give you an example. Anybody who feels that he is suffering from COVID gets a test done. So now how is the test done? The sample is collected, and then a unique ID is assigned to that person. Within next 24 to 48 hours, the report comes, and either he tests negative or positive. If it is negative, fine. If it is positive, then what happens? The medical team from the district administration immediately comes and with an ambulance and takes this person to the nearest assigned COVID hospital of the district administration. Thereafter, a detailed procedure of contact tracing takes place. After this, when the contact tracing is done, again the testing of these contacts who had been in close proximity is done. And then again the chain continues like that. So if you see, it is again an issue related very closely to logistics, because the entire process, or somebody rings at the helpline number and feels that he or she is not feeling well, the resources are mobilized immediately and people contact you from the district administration. So there is a lot of thing which is going on behind the scene which we don't perceive in a very, very obvious manner otherwise. Then the second dimension. during the lockdown and just before the lockdown, I would say a lot of flights were coming after evacuating Indians, and they were coming to our country back. All the international flights were screened, the passengers were screened. Then afterwards, when they went off to their residences, a process of stamping also took place from the civil aviation authorities and the district administration put together. And all this massive exercise, all these things are an issue related to logistics. Another example, even when the management of patients has to be done, the institutional quarantine facilities, all the resources available in any district throughout the country was done in a very meticulous manner. All the departments which had any sort of building which could be converted into quarantine facilities, they were mapped. How many beds would be required? How many beds could be made available? What would be the shortfall? Things like that were being worked out. Then all the resources again were being managed. How many beds? How many bed sheets? And then for each patient, what would be the requirements? All these things, men, material, resources, management at such a large scale. I mean, it's really you have to see it to believe it. So all these things go on to prove that there has been a logistics of COVID in everything which we do. Even in the hospitals, the procurement of the PP kits or the sanitizing facilities on the campuses, everything required men and material. So that is how I have conceptualized this concept of the logistics of COVID. So one part is that, the initial part. Then after just introducing you to this concept, I would like to go back in time almost 4 months back in the month of March, just when the Janata curfew was imposed on 22nd of March. I still remember, and I will be giving you certain examples from ground zero because I got this opportunity to be interacting with the field level units of the railways, of the district administration, of the state government agencies. So I will give you my own experience also mixed with the narrative of today's webinar. When the lockdown was just to begin, the lockdown began on the 24th of March, but just before that, on 22nd of March, we had the Janata curfew. So all these special trains which were bringing people from all over the country were coming to our stations. And 22nd March, all the buses, all the public transport, nothing was to move on the roads. Now it became a difficult situation. Thousands of people coming to your stations. You have to maintain social distancing. You have to dispatch them to their respective native places, especially because from 24th, all the passenger train services were going to be suspended. And we did not want a situation where people remain stranded on the stations or on the bus stops or on various locations inside the city. So what do? So the railways then reached out to the state road transport agencies. They also were quite apprehensive on how to go about it. Then the directions of the state government were sought, and as a dispensation, buses were brought to the stations just for the evacuation of these passengers from the railway station. So that was just the beginning. After that, the lockdown started, and during the lockdown also we had many such cases where people, despite the best of the efforts, were stranded on their way back or wherever they had gone to for their work or medical related purposes or to meet their family, things like that. Now, the state government, the district administration also had a big challenge before them. Some people, of course, were staying with their relatives and friends and whatever, but there were a large number of people who did not have places to stay. So arranging for their shelter, arranging for food for them on a daily basis, that was yet again a challenge. Reaching out to them so that there was no distress. And mind you, these were the times when a lot of COVID protocol had to be followed. So whenever I talk anything, just keep in mind, at the back of your mind, just keep it in mind that behind the scene, a lot of COVID protocol also was to be maintained. So it was not an easy task. Things are not flying on the road. You have to reach out to them. You have to give them food. Then the example of the community kitchens. So the concept of community kitchens came up. There again, the issue of logistics. When you have to cook for maybe 5,000 people, how do you go about it? You have to collect the material. You have to collect people who can cook it. Then you have to collect people who can sort of serve these meals. So every step there was a basic issue of logistics involved. And now when we look back, everything looks like, yes, it went off pretty well. But no, at the moment when we were in the thick of things, managing things, it was really a challenge. So Railways also pitched in a very big way, I would say. Through its IRCTC, we were providing meals, especially in Delhi. Around 5 lakh meals were provided to people. And we have our RPF wing, which did a really challenging task of reaching out to people who were in need, and the food was being cooked and provided to them. Not far behind was the women's welfare associations in the various divisions of the railways. To these associations and agencies, and also sometimes with the help of NGOs, as well as the district administration in close coordination, because when you have to reach out to the people, you needed to inform the district administration that yes, food is going to be served in this locality. So all this protocol had to be followed. The passes had to be issued. So everything involved a lot of close coordination, a lot of shared responsibilities, and all the time, all the agencies were working in tandem, and they were, at times, there were days when we were just on through mobile phones and through our WhatsApp, we were just interacting with each other, right from the top to the bottom level. That is how the delivery system worked. So again, coming back to these examples, when we talk of the railways, when the lockdown struck, it was such a shock for all of us, I can say, because never in the history of railways, the 167-year-old history that we have, did the passenger carrying trains, the mail express trains, stop for any reason. And come 24th March, and we are told that nothing is going to ply. And we were simply taken aback, and I just remember and recall all my junior officers and my staff coming and saying, "Ma'am, how do we deal with this situation? We have never lived in such an empty situation." When I was struck by this suddenness. But then, for a railway person, it really doesn't take too much of time to decide what next. So we took on the responsibility of lot of other things. At that point in time, if we remember in March, masks, sanitizers, PP kits, ventilators, all these things were not really available in the market, and the need was felt. And every day a monitoring committee right at the level of Government of India was monitoring each and everything, and it was assessed that there would be a large scale requirement of these sort of things. And since there was a lockdown, there was no production going on, the markets were closed, there was no movement of men and material, especially if you recall lockdown phase 1. So then we took upon us the responsibility of making on a large scale basis masks. For our own staff also we needed the masks. So apart from masks being procured from the market to some extent, we did an in-house exercise. We deputed people who were in our coaching depots, in our workshops. They started stitching the mask. And not behind the scene was again the women's welfare associations, and through that we also generated employment for needy women and girls sitting at home who had been rendered jobless. So we started preparing masks. Then came the issue of sanitizer. A lot of research went into it, and before the large-scale production of sanitizers started in the markets and the industry also took over this issue, we were also doing in-house production of sanitizers. Then came the issue of PPE kits. Taking the example of the Western countries where it was seen that a lot of medical personnel, and not only the medical personnel, all the paramedic staff, the police and all those people who would be in the field handling COVID related issues would be requiring these PPE kits. Such large scale production overnight was not possible. So again we pitched in and Indian Railways got the design approved from DRDO. Jagadhri workshop did a very good work, and then the design with the approved specifications was sort of circulated to all the units across the country and the production of the PPE kit started. I'll give you another small example. We see the face shields, now they are available in the market. At that point in time in early April, we were doing a lot of brainstorming. What would be required? How do we get it? And then there was a lot of enterprise within the railways. I found that all those units, apart from running the trains, we have a lot of ingenuity with us. So one day, one young boy came up to me and said, "Ma'am, we have made a small face shield." At that time, we did not realize what is the future going to be like. And it was just a small plastic piece of plastic with a hairband, and they had made it. And they said, "Ki ma'am, since those people who are still coming for train operations and they are still in the risk of getting infected, maybe we can use it." So it was a good idea. Then the foot operated sanitizer machines, the contactless hand wash machines, they were very simple contraptions. If we look back, anybody is going to say, "Oh, it's such a crude thing." But at that point in time, it was really relevant that all the staff who are maintaining the infrastructure and who are coming out of the safety of their homes to work for us, they are kept safe and all precautions related to COVID are ensured. We did a lot of distribution of the corona prevention kits, which included masks, sanitizers and soaps and things like that. Then moving on, I will like to now come to the next issue, that is the supply of essentials. A very major role which we played was through the operation of the goods trains and the parcel special trains, the timetable parcel trains. Since capacity was available with us, we ran these timetabled special parcel trains for the first time to help the people in transporting medicines, sanitizers, edible items, milk products and things like that, which really helped. And the timetabled aspect was very helpful to the people because people knew when exactly the consignment would be coming and they could plan for their logistics at their end. Then the supply of the food grains. This again was a high point. Our loading of food grains was a record high during this period because food grains from the northern region of the country were being transported to other parts of the country, especially the northeastern parts. And we ran what is known as the long haul food grain trains, that is commonly known as the Annapurna trains. So they were a sight to see. 2 full rake BCN loads, covered stock, full of food grain, moving together in the form of a train, one single train. It was unprecedented, but we did it. Another challenging thing which we took upon us was the maintenance of assets, both the fixed as well as the moving, rolling stock. So never in the history again we had got an opportunity when so much time was available for maintenance. Although at the backdrop one must really understand that this was also a time when the lockdown was fully imposed and manpower was really not available to that extent. There was no contractual labor which we could use, but through our in-house resources, maintaining social distancing, maintaining the COVID protocol, our staff did a wonderful job throughout the country. A lot of works requiring traffic blocks were completed. The launching of girders, the old FOBs which had to be dismantled, a lot of bridge works, bridge safety related works. Then one new bridge was also commissioned during this time. A lot of overhead maintenance which was to be done, that was done. And as far as the rolling stock goes, the coaches were never available to us for such a long duration. So we did a whole hog pest control, rodent control, zero missing fitting exercise. And we were in readiness that yes, we are ready at all points in time. Whenever we are required, we shall run the trains with the best of our intentions. Then next stage comes when the movement starts, and here I would like to tell you how the interplay of the logistics of COVID and the Shramik specials, through the example of Shramik specials, the interplay of logistics of COVID and the Indian Railways. A lot of prime airtime went into the description and the details of the Shramik specials, and a lot of us kept viewing this on the print, in the print and the electronic channels, media. But how did this all happen? I would just like to briefly touch upon this because it might be of some interest to the audience today. From 1st of May, that is the Labor Day or the Shramik Divas, which we call in India, the Shramik specials were started. So what was the concept? The concept was like this. There were a number of states like Gujarat, Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu and Delhi, etc., where a lot of migrant labor, that is workforce, work over there in normal times. But due to the lockdown, they had been rendered jobless and it was a difficult situation. And time was running out. They were really in despair. And how do we bring them back to their native places? They belong to mainly the states of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Odisha, West Bengal, and Rajasthan, etc. So this concept of Shramik specials was planned. And in this, the entire concept was like this. Every state, supposing there was a dispatching state and there was a receiving state. So I will give you with the help of an example. Supposing Gujarat wanted to send people back to Uttar Pradesh. So I will give you an example. And here I would also like to present the fact that the maximum number of people who moved from any state are from the states of Gujarat, from the state of Maharashtra. They accounted for almost totaling 50% of the total dispatches. And on the receiving side, Uttar Pradesh and Bihar accounted for 75% of the inward number of passengers. So the planning was very meticulous. At the state level, there was a nodal state coordinator from the side of the state administration, and from the side of the railways also there was one nodal officer at the level of either a general manager or the DRM, who was the nodal coordinator from the side of the railways for that particular state. The dispatching states, they opened the registration for all the people who wanted to go back to their homes. So after the registration was opened, they got a list. This again, mind you, please observe how the logistics was at play. The large number of people registered, then the list was prepared. Based on the list, then the segregation was done district-wise for the state to where they intended to go. Based on that, they used to send a requisition to the receiving state. So Gujarat would send a request seeking NOC from the state of Uttar Pradesh. This, at the level of the state government, the nodal officer would give the NOC and also keep the railways informed. So that is how we came to know that yes, on such and such date, 10 trains from Gujarat would be reaching Lucknow, Gorakhpur or Varanasi and things like that. Then a detailing was done at the dispatching district level. They made out the list. Every train had to accommodate say 1100 passengers or 1200 passengers. Again, social distancing had to be maintained and things like that. And then all those people were reached out. Supposing they had to go today, then the district administration of the dispatching district would reach out to each and every person who was supposed to go. They were screened. A medical certificate was issued to them that yes, they are asymptomatic and they can travel. Then they were brought to the station. That again was an exercise through buses from different points in the city, in the district. All of them assembled there. And then they were made to board the trains, which was standing at the platform. Again, you can imagine there was such a big rush, such a big clamor to return to their places, to maintain a sense of discipline and decorum and to prevent any untoward incident at the station. A lot of logistics was involved. The railways also had to deploy a large number of people from the commercial side, from the RPF side, from the medical side, and the station masters and things like that. And then the trains were sanitized fully, the platforms were sanitized fully, and at the stations also there was a certain protocol. There would be a single entry, single exit, so that people could not just loiter around or sneak away from here and there. People could not intermix. And then they were put on these trains. While being put on these trains, the state government gave them some food packet. That again was an exercise in logistics, planning for all that. Then when these people boarded the train for their destination, en route meals had to be provided. For that, IRCTC was pitching in a big way, but considering the large number of Shramik specials which were run, mind you, around 5,000 Shramik special trains were run during the months of May and June. And we had to provide for 6.5 million passengers in this almost 5,000 Shramik special trains, meals numbering to almost 19 million food packets and around 21.5 million packaged drinking water. So you can understand, from ground zero, if I tell you, at a station, we were dealing with almost on an average 25 to 30 trains every day on the major stations, and on some days the figures reached even up to 46. So 46 trains and with almost 1200 or 1100 passengers, providing food to almost 50,000 passengers at a station on a single day. You can well imagine the magnitude of operations and the logistics involved. Again, it was IRCTC plus the railway divisions, and again this was the time when lockdown was still in force. The markets were not freely open. There was a crisis for things as small as packets of biscuit, and to arrange in such large numbers, it was a humongous exercise in itself. But nonetheless, we did it, and we did it only because there was a very, very intricate sense of close coordination between the district administration, the enforcement agencies, the railways, the medical teams, and things like that. Here I would also like to give one or two just small examples about the responsiveness aspect. You must have read in the newspapers, there was this case where there was an autistic child in Mumbai whose mother had tweeted, and Indian Railways went all the way to provide 25 liters of camel's milk to the services of these timetabled parcel special trains. Then there were more than 36 children who were born on these Shramik special trains. Now, can anyone imagine such a situation? But yes, we did it. People were taken off the train, the ladies were taken to the hospital, and everything went off well thereafter. So we had a lot of positive stories. But behind that was the sincere effort of all the Corona warriors. Corona warriors, not only from the railways, but also from all other agencies, the paramedics, the medical team, the teams that were sanitizing the premises, the police, and also some people who were sitting, although sitting at home, they were not doing anything, seemingly not doing anything, but they were sort of providing support and motivation to our frontline team. They were writing down motivational songs, and through their social media channels, they were just trying to lift up the spirits of all those people who were doing the frontline job. Here I would also like to mention in particular the role of the loco pilots and the crew of and the guards of the trains and the RPF personnel who were escorting all these Shramik special trains. It was indeed a big challenge to keep them motivated, but believe me, I had an opportunity to visit my stations and my people on certain occasions, and I was absolutely, I would say, overwhelmed to see the level of commitment, the level of sincerity, and the level of dedication of all my frontline staff. And I am giving you this example from my division because we had the opportunity of handling the largest number of Shramik special trains on our Lucknow division, and they accounted for more than 1/10 of the total number of Shramik specials which had run throughout this period. So all these things became important. Then I will now just quickly, because time is running out, switch over to the concept of the isolation or the COVID care coaches. Again, Indian Railways came into the forefront because it was felt that for putting people on institutional quarantine and for handling people who were having mild symptoms or were asymptomatic but had tested positive for COVID needed to be kept somewhere, and in some districts the capacity of handling them was not adequately available with the district administration, and more so in the remote parts of the countries which were handling a lot of villages and the rural areas. The medical facilities also did not have that sort of institutional capacity. So here again, a sort of very closed internet interwoven concept of this isolation coaches being provided at those locations where medical facility had to be provided in the nick of time, and monitoring needed to be done, was done through the concept of these COVID care coaches. Again, for the COVID care coaches, a detailed policy guideline was issued by the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, which outlined the SOP and the protocol. Thereafter, for each state, with every state, the concerned railway divisions, we drew out a memorandum of understanding, spelling out clearly the responsibilities of all the stakeholders, and all the locations were identified where they would be needing such a facility. And again, I would like to here mention that the railway station at Mau, very close to Banaras, Varanasi, on Banaras division of Northeastern Railway, had the opportunity of handling these patients for the first time in the country. And at Shakur Basti also we have some patients. So likewise, these 5,000 coaches which were converted, that also was a massive exercise, because the way how they had to be converted, the GS coaches and the GSTN coaches, how they had to be made amenable to being converted into these medical facilities or these semi-medical facilities, was an exercise by itself. How the oxygen cylinders needed to be placed, what will be the protocol for the segregation of the biomedical waste, how do we dispose it off, and then how does the medical team come and how are the approach roads going to be. Segregation had to be done, the linen, the PP kits, and things like that. So all those things are an example how any coordinated response to any situation of this magnitude also can be handled in a very, very positive way. Behind the scene, when all these things were happening, I would also like to mention a very special initiative of the government which had already been implemented. That is the e-office concept that came to our help. And during this period, when people were not going to their normal offices and work from home had to be done, the files had to be cleared, the bills had to be cleared, and the salary payment had to be done. People sitting at home were doing all these things using e-office, and we also use this opportunity to extend the outreach of this digital platform. And again, I would like to express my happiness on the fact that our division, Lucknow division, happens to be now a completely paperless division. Right from the divisional headquarters up to the station level at the remotest location, everyone is digitally connected. And it is just because due to this massive crisis, we felt that we need to remain interconnected, but how do we do that? And we have to ensure that work does not come to a standstill. So we maximized the outreach of this e-office, and same holds for the entire country. All the divisions on Indian Railways are now fully mapped on e-office, and not only e-office, on other platforms like eDAS, that is the drawing and approval systems, the work contract management system, the HRMS, and all the digital platforms are now being made fully use of. Moreover, during this entire period, there was a dashboard on which live monitoring of the status of availability of the important resources was being managed and monitored. That is the e-Drishti. From e-Drishti, we could see which division has how many PP kits available, how many masks available, how many sanitizers are there, how many COVID coaches are there. And also some of the railway hospitals have also been identified by the state government to be taken over as COVID hospital when the capacity in their district hospitals requires it. And some of the hospitals like the Gorakhpur hospital has been taken over. So all these things just reiterate the fact that this crisis, this adversity posed a lot of new opportunities also for us, and how we availed of these situations. Before winding off, I would also like to briefly touch upon another dimension of the logistics. When all these Shramik specials had reached their destinations, the government of India compiled the data regarding how many migrant laborers had gone to their native places. And as I told you earlier, the maximum recipients were the states of Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, Rajasthan, and some other, West Bengal, Odisha, like that. So a district-wise list was compiled, and it was found that there are 116 districts all over the country where these migrant laborers had gone to, basically their native places. Accordingly, Government of India has launched from the 20th of June this scheme of Garib Kalyan Rozgar Yojana Abhiyan, which will be valid up to 31st of October, and this is to provide an impetus to the economic activity of these areas through the help of engaging these migrant workers who had reached back home and were wanting some sort of means of livelihood. So in the state of Uttar Pradesh, for example, 31 districts have been identified, and there are 25 types of activities related departments have been identified. So railways again features here, PWD is there, and lot of wherever construction, NHAI is there. So lot of construction activities are going on in a number of districts. So they have mapped these districts with the labor available and then the ongoing works of the various agencies. And then again a dashboard sort of system has been created which is being updated on a daily basis. How many man days are being deployed and what are the contractual payments and things like that. So this again, I would say at the backdrop is basically a massive logistics exercise which has gone into this. So I would now like to just wind up by saying that this seemingly gargantuan task of maintaining and enforcing the COVID precautions, even while keeping the wheels of the nation moving, ensuring the maintenance of assets, running of essential services, maintaining the equilibrium of supply and chain, and providing meals to the needy, running special trains, the isolation coaches are all testimony to the diligent delivery mechanism of the Indian Railways, as well as it also speaks volumes about the true team spirit which has gone behind this entire process of the logistics of COVID. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Monica, for that lovely and a very extremely interesting and absorbing presentation. I am sure we will all learn from your rich experience and value it in our lives and times to come. Our next speaker, Mr. Vinod Asthana, is an active member of CILT, and with his rich and varied experience on the railways, then in Indian Railway Catering and Tourism Corporation, and then warehousing as the CMD of the organization, is able to contribute in a large way towards logistics. Mr. Asthana will speak on warehousing, a very important part of the logistics system. It allows for timely delivery and optimized distribution, leading to increased labor productivity and eventually greater customer satisfaction. Mr. Asthana.
Thank you, Ragini. Good afternoon to Mr. Shantinarayan, to Mr. Razak, and to all the participants of this seminar. I must say that the subject of the day has got three very important words. It is railways, it is logistics, and it is COVID. I will briefly touch upon all these three terms. Now, COVID, at the outset, let me tell you, it is very unique. It is unique in many ways. Number one, it is global. When I say global, the idea is that we don't have anything to compare with. We have to compare ourselves, our performance, our COVID-19 cases, our diagnosis, our treatment with what is happening in other countries. That's why, and it is spreading to more than 185 countries in the world, except for the few island countries which are not affected by it. And the important feature of COVID is that it is unforeseen. It has come as a surprise. As Monica was saying, we were all taken by surprise when on 24th of March the lockdown was enforced. And it was such unforeseen that even some people left their laptop in office and they were not in a position to work from home also. So in some cases, the families were split. So in some cases, the family members could not join back for months together. So it was so much of unforeseen, which has affected the social fabric and the economic fabric of the country. And the important thing is that it is totally unprecedented. When I say unprecedented, it is to say that we don't have anything by which we have gotten past history to understand this virus. or to see how to react to this virus. So basically, we have heard of something which has taken place about a century back, somewhere in 1918 or where a yellow fever took place. But there are not a lot of documentation available and not a lot of knowledge available that how it was done. And therefore, it is totally unprecedented, and we have to think of ways and means to come over the situation of COVID-19. And the feature of COVID-19 is that it is unpredictable. You cannot predict what is going to happen and how much time it will take, when it will be possible for us to say that COVID is not there or the normalcy will come, whether it will be there for 2 months, 4 months, 6 months. We have already lost the first quarter of the financial year in this. So the future of Corona, I would say, is still a mystery, not only for us, but the whole society all over the world. Somewhere the lockdowns are coming back, somewhere the colleges are being opened, somewhere the offices have been opened, somewhere the lockdown has been enforced. A different type of things are being tried by the management, by the administration, by the states, by the country, governments. But it is all still in a very flexible situation. And what I feel that future with Corona is still a mystery. We don't know when the vaccine will be available, what type of vaccine will be available, because Corona, we understand, has got a lot of different strains also. So which strain, what type of vaccine will work. Now, having said that about COVID-19, its uniqueness, I will tell you how it has impacted us initially. See, the railway is one part of it, but the social life also. The social life has been very badly affected in India also and abroad also, in all societies. Because after all, we are all human beings, we are all social animals, and we want to meet your colleagues, friends, peer group, family members, and life after Corona, how it is going to be is a big challenge. Now, leave the social part separate. Let's come to the economy, impact on the economy. Now, all sectors of economy have been hit by this Corona. Now, some have been hit very badly. Some have not been hit so badly. But let me tell you that all sectors of economy have been hit very badly. If I say that in the category of those who have been worst hit is like hospitality, is like tourism. Companies which have suffered very badly are like Oyo, who are doing very well. Now they have totally given pink slips to thousands of staff. And the companies which are doing slightly better are the companies like in IT sector, where because moving to online business and all that, the IT sector is showing a lot of growth potential. The pharma sector is growing, and pleased to say the online education sector is also growing, because most of the classes now are shifting to online, and even the schools, primary school teachers are also shifting to online. So online education is coming up in a big way. Even the universities are now shifting to the online education. Now, seeing the impact of this on logistics is the next issue. Now, logistics we define as the transportation of goods and storage of goods. The two things, transportation of goods and storage of goods from origin to destination in timely and cost-efficient manner. Now, these words are very important. We'll come to those later also. What is timely and what is cost-efficient? Because these words are very important in logistics. Now, as we all know, that during the lockdown, the truck movement was not possible. It has suffered very badly. Now, even after some relaxation of the lockdown, it's not possible to get loaders. It's not possible to get drivers because most of them have gone to their villages. We know that even at the Bangladesh border, thousands of trucks are parked up in Patrapol because they're not in position to cross the border into Bangladesh, only because of Corona. Having said that logistics of essential goods was being permitted, no doubt, and railway has played a very prominent part in supplying of essential goods. Dr. Monica Agnotri, my co-panelist, has elaborated on that. And besides Shramik Specials, food train movement, recalled food train movement, parcel trains and apps like Setu, which helped in the movement of parcel trains. Then IRCTC's contribution both in terms of bulk food supply and in terms of railway supply, then COVID-19 coaches. And not only this, the production units have also joined hands in manufacturing medical equipment for the hospitals, which included things like PPEs, ventilators, beds for the hospital, tables, which were slightly issues which were needed today. So I would say, just to add one more, that there was no shortage of anything, of any essential good across the country. The role that railways has played, which needs to be appreciated. And I would say that railways has done exceedingly well as an organization, as a unique organization which has got so much committed manpower and is seen as a beacon of hope and public service in this crisis. And railway really rose to the occasion at this time. But to say that railway has not suffered is not the purpose in terms of logistics. In the first quarter itself, of this financial year, there has been a 50% loss in freight. And passenger operation is already quite minimal, which is being worked on. But the impact of COVID-19 has got in some positive effects also. Just to say that working paperless is one of the positive improvements which is taking place. The more paperless working we introduce, the transaction cost in logistics will come down significantly. And the new IT digital systems software which has come up is trying to cut the time frame also in doing decision making, moving the papers and bringing the paperless IT solutions. Another thing is to go more and more into contactless working, which requires a lot of changes in terms that how will the post-COVID situation will be, how much mechanization can you do it, how many types of equipment you can use, how social distancing will be maintained, and what type of systems of common area, like you will have to develop, like in terms of canteen, in terms of your refreshment rooms, in terms of common sitting area, in terms of your washrooms, how you stagger them, how you make them. These are the type of innovations which have come up. Some minor innovations railways have also done up, like in terms of that you go and show your PNR, scan your PNR, and you'll get a boarding pass. Like water supply, that you don't have to touch the tap. These are small innovations which have come up. Large innovations are also being worked out that you don't have to touch, and you should be in a position to work contactless. Now coming to logistics. Logistics, as we all know, consists of, as I said earlier, which deals with transportation and storage. So basically it is transportation, then warehousing, and then it is called something which is called value-added service. Now value-added service is a very, very basket of activities which is performed in the warehouse. That is why now, as we go ahead, we'll talk about the warehousing. But if you take the logistics, how the logistics is seen in this country, the World Bank report of 2018 says that ranks the countries, all the countries, rates them into as per logistics index of the country. Now, the rating is done on the basis of parameters which relate to infrastructure, no doubt, number one. Second is how the customs perform, because in terms of international trade, rule of customs is very important. Then tracking, tracing, whether you have got the IT network to do tracking, tracing, and then the timeliness, the time that you take, the transit time, and how much time it takes for the goods to reach, and so on and so forth. These are some of the important parameters which World Bank examines for everything. Now, countries like on the top of the table is Germany, probably led by Sweden, Japan, who are in the top 5 normally are there. If we see where India stands today, it is somewhere around 40. Today it is 44 in this list, but earlier it was somewhere like 42, and somewhere it was 46. But we do not think that India is lagging too much behind in terms of logistics, because if we have to compare India's performance with the countries of that size, countries of size of like Japan and Germany are very small when you compare with India. And you compare with the countries of this size, like you see USA. USA has got ranking of 14th in the list. And China is 26th. So we can compare with them, but that is not so important. What is more important is what is the logistics cost that is India is having. That is the more important factor than looking at the rankings. Now, to take this issue forward, and the government of India decided that states will also have their ranking. Now, the states are also being ranked by the government, by the Ministry of Commerce. What is the logistic performance index of each state in the country, which has enabled them to have a competition among the states, and the states are coming up with large number of policies to attract investment in terms of land, in terms of taxation, in terms of power supply, in terms of labor, and in terms of also giving some assistance by the state government. These are various concessions being given, like states like Chhattisgarh, states like Gujarat, states like Maharashtra, Karnataka. They have come out with their own logistics policies for logistic parks, setting up logistic parks, setting up warehouses. And these are the type of things, development which have taken place. And because what the issue is, if you don't have infrastructure, if you don't set up warehouses, if you don't provide support, the logistic index is low, you will not have the investment coming to your state. Because that is where the determinant factor is logistics cost, where the investor wants to set up. So therefore, the logistics cost has become a very important component of the decision making for investments also in each state. Now, the logistics cost in India is somewhere between 14 to 16% is being talked about in the national logistics policy, which is, I think, in the final stages of drafting. But this is 14 to 16% is of the GDP. Once we say what is the 16%, it is of the GDP. Now, if you are in position to reduce, to bring it to around 10% or something, it releases a huge amount of money. If your economy is 3 trillion, so see, it's about more than half a trillion is logistics cost. That is how it is seen. So reducing the logistics cost is very important, and that is what is the whole purpose of national logistics policy is also, and all this is to reduce logistics cost. Now, logistics cost, reducing it is not a very simple solution. All the partners, all the players in this whole thing have to integrate. That is why the word integration is very important when you talk about logistics. Logistics defines the competitiveness of the product today. Now, if every organization looks at what is my logistics cost, so that will define the competitiveness of the product. If you have a very efficient supply chain management, then you will be able to have a more competitive edge over the others. Now, having said this, that transportation is an integral part of logistics. I would not like to go for road and air and waterways and at this stage coastal shipping and all that. I will confine myself to railways, which is the other term which is important. Now, railway today, as per last year's figure, is loading about 3.2 million tons per day. And that is the loading average for the whole year. The 3.2 million tons every day. Now, no doubt the freight is going up year by year. But what is important is that the share is dropping in the overall cake of transportation. That is significant. That no doubt your overall freight is increasing, but the volume is increasing, but not commensurate with the growth in the economy. And that is why your share is coming down. Now, what is the problem and where lies the solution? See, what has happened since independence, if you see, there is the practice of cross-subsidization in railways. And the growth of passenger traffic is continuously there with the people migrating to the bigger cities and urbanization taking place. And on the same infrastructure, what is getting retarded is the freight. Because we are running more passenger trains, and because there is cross-subsidization, The level of cost subsidization, they're not official figures, but some informal report talk about 25%, some talk about 30% cost subsidization. But irrespective of that, the freight tariff has gone up and the passenger fares have been kept. So what has happened? With the same infrastructure, you are providing services for running freight trains, and what has been the consequence? The consequence has been, with the fixed infrastructure, the average goods speed today, as per last year's figure, is also 24 kilometers per hour. And I think Shanti will agree with me that in the last 30 years, this figure has not crossed by more than 3 to 4 kilometers. And in spite of all the investments that have taken place, that investment is not taking place. In the last 10 years, more than 10 lakh crores have been invested, and the plan is to have another plus 50 lakh crore investment by 2030. And that includes the private investment also, not that everything done by the government. Now, having said that if you are looking for a high value, low volume commodities to move on the railways, most important thing which I mentioned at the outset is that you have to have a time limit, and you have to have something called cost effective system. Now, in both the cases, railway is suffering. And why the high value commodities are more susceptible? Because it carries the inventory carrying cost. Because it carries the inventory carrying cost, which is very important for them, that if you delay your product by 2 days or 3 days, it carries an enormous amount of money for the inventory carrying cost for the high value products. And that is the problem with this system, that we have to increase the speed. And once we invest in railways, we invest comprehensively so as to a particular sector or particular segment or particular freight route is picked up, and investment is made in that all the elements of that freight route to bring the speed there. I'm not going into what changes will come with DFC and all that, because that is not the stage at this point. But railway should identify not only this, that push the investment in the defined freight corridors now, but railway must also identify new freight corridors. Because if you see the track density per 1,000 square kilometer, India is among the lowest in the large economies. Among the large economies, India is the lowest. It's one of the lowest. I will not say lowest, but one of the lowest. If you see the track density, route density per 1,000 square kilometer. So that is very important, that we have to identify new freight corridors to take this forward. Now, having said that, I'll come to what is the warehousing. Now, warehousing is the game changer in logistics. And basically, why it is a game changer in logistics? Because it is a link between the transporter and the logistics service provider. That is why warehousing is the key factor, and it is emerging as a game changer in logistics. Now, the most important drivers of warehousing, because it is slated to increase at the rate of about, last year was slated for 25%, but because of the corona and its impact, it has not been so. But I think it is touching about, in 19 and 20, it is touching about 20. And I think in the new year 2021, it is probably slated again to pick up and probably touch at 25%. Now, there are factors why it is so. Why is there so much optimism on warehousing? Now, the drivers of warehousing in India presently are GST, which has permitted them to develop very, very large warehouses because the state limitations have gone away, and the other is the e-commerce business, which is expanding. And Corona has set up that e-commerce is growing up much faster than was anticipated now. A year-on-year growth of e-commerce is also slated to be roughly around 20%. But GST itself, I would like to mention here, has not that it has helped warehousing, but it has in a position that it has caused some amount of damage to the railways freight also. Because now a truck from Ludhiana or Delhi can reach Bombay or Bangalore in a more or less comparable time than the train, because there is no blockade at the checkpost. Now with the coming of GST, the truck can go smoothly. So the time frame is more or less coming the same. That what you have with the double driver, they are in a position to cover the distance same time. Due to which the definite advantage of home to home, door-to-door service being available with the truck, railway has to still facing a much more stiff competition because of the GST. Now, e-commerce requires positively what is called the A-grade warehousing, and A-grade warehousing is coming up. A lot of investments is coming from the FDI, and a lot of PE firms, they are investing in the A-grade warehousing. And most of the warehouses of e-commerce are something called what is called a smart warehouse. These smart warehouses are being developed, and they are being mostly operated round the clock. And in the post-COVID, these type of warehouses will be further get a boost because of the e-commerce that is going to develop more and more. Now, in India, traditionally the warehouses have been mostly private, then public, then mostly if you see about 20 years back, they were generally with the government, like state government, central government. They were having the maximum warehouses and FCI and so forth. But now with the changing environment in India also, and we have the bonded warehouse, which are customs warehouses, then the cold chain warehouses. And cold chain warehouses are something which are yet to take off in India. Though the government is making a lot of effort, the policies are there for the food parks and all that. And still, the perishable cargo today, has got a wastage of fruits and vegetables, I would say 40%. And some assessment has been done that the loss per year of this perishable cargo is about 98,000 crores every year in terms of value. Now, having said that we need more systematic input into the cold chain warehouses, and it's not so simple also because of the power consumption, because of technology, because of what the product can bear. These are other complications with that. Coming to rail-side warehousing. Rail-side warehousing is something which is a concept to convert the railway as a national transporter into a logistics service provider for bag commodities. Basically, for bag commodities, rail-side warehousing was developed, and the idea was that railway, being an organization, being a national transporter, how to enter into logistics arena. That is where the rail-side warehouse was a big innovation, and for bag commodities which were getting prone to a lot of pilferage, leakages, then getting damaged because of rains, and not in a position to provide a customer-friendly service, this rail-side warehousing was developed. And it was more because of commodities like food grain, fertilizer, cement, sugar, salt. These were the commodities which moved normally in the bags which were being handled there. Now these warehouses are 700 meters long, the length of the whole train, and they all have got platform level openings. Then there were gates were designed as per the wagon, so that the wagon and the gate, the warehouses are against each other. They were having 24/7 operation. Then loading, unloading infrastructure was available. Truck parking was there. Service buildings were there. Staff convenience, welfare, roads, and also the lighting arrangements and all that. This type of facilities were developed because this will enable the customer to keep his goods after unloading and dispatch whenever he wants, instead of taking it by truck to some other warehouse somewhere close by and having a handling there and then shifting a warehouse and again distributing and setting it. So this type of arrangement could reduce the logistics cost to a great extent. The rail-side warehouses also provided them safety, security, gate pass systems and all that. Gave them the insurance also. The stocks they were covered by insurance. Then labor for handling all the time. Because in most of the locations, there were truck restrictions during daytime. Trucks were not allowed to move during daytime. So the loading was primarily being done in the evening hours or in the early morning hours. That was one of the two. That was not possible in the otherwise in the system of railways. So this was very convenient to everybody who was handling with these products. Then I would tell you how this whole thing worked in a rail-side warehouse. Rail-side warehouses at both the ends of 700 meters were having office complexes. Now, the one portion was with the railway office, the other was with the rail-side warehouse operator, but other portions were being utilized by the vendors. Now, everywhere we gave them Wi-Fi. It was like a co-working space was created for them. So all the vendors who were there, they brought their laptops and we gave them printers, and they used to connect with it, and they made it into a distribution and sales office. So they could issue their invoices from there. That was a very big improvement, that you're having the goods there only. The chap comes and sits there, uses a co-working area, and is in a position to decide and dispatch. So he doesn't have to bother. This whole model was very successful, and now this is being now adopted in the model PFTs also, which are being set up, and the PFTs are which are coming up in a big way. They have got even for the liquid cargo like vegetable oil. They have got for the iron and steel. They have got for the containers. They have got systems for the fertilizer. So there are a lot of things like that. For private freight terminal operators are trying to develop it more and more of rail-side warehousing. Now I'll tell you a case just to explain the case of fertilizer movement in India, how this rail-side warehousing was helping. Now the urea is being imported at Kandla. Now from Kandla, when the urea was being imported, traditionally before the rail-side warehouse developed in Kandla, it was being taken from the berthing by a truck, and from the truck it was, after unloading, it was being put in a truck. From a truck it was being taken to a warehouse where it was being unloaded, and when it is imported, it comes loose. So you have to bag it somewhere. So that warehouse they have to bag it, and bagging is for the different companies for different type of requirements. So bagging was done by the operator, and then he was taking it, placing an indent with the railways, and then when the indent comes, he had to deploy about 60 trucks to take it and then load it at the Kandla station, the Kandla goods shed. That is such environment it was there. When this whole thing was there, rail-side warehouse came. He used to bring it directly from there in loose from the port and put it in the warehouse. And in the warehouse, we provided a ramp so that the dumper could go inside the warehouse straight away. So there's no handling. He only mechanized unloading. It was there, and we permitted him to put a bagging plant inside the warehouse. So he could do the bagging there only, round the clock. And whenever the train indent was there, he would load it there only. So that was convenience. And suppose it has to go to Sanat Nagar or Alam Nagar or Rosa, wherever it has to go. Here also the rail-side warehouse was unloaded there. The bags were unloaded and kept there only. And there the chap used to distribute and sell from there only. And this whole model was profitable, and it helped the railways and it helped the operators also. That was the type of systems the rail-side warehouse came up, and the PFTs are gradually adopting it in a big way. Now, my suggestion is that railway goods sheds which are there can be converted with private participation on the same model. Some huge goods sheds are available with us, which can be developed on the same model. But the modernization has to take place, computerization has to take place, and the system has to be the infrastructure has to be improved so that the handling becomes with the MHEs, that whatever MHEs are required, they're available to make it less labor intensive. Today, the warehouses that we had were quite labor intensive. And we had to look into a lot of welfare measures for the labor also, that we have to, like Shakur Basti, we deputed a doctor once a week to go there and attend them, that we would supply them gur and chana also, because the cement was being handled, which was very choking for them, for the lungs and all that. So I mean, those type of labor intensive, we should adopt some techniques by which some component will always remain, but we should bring more of material handling equipments and try to work on it so that it be possible to reduce the dependence on labor. Now, this is not the only thing, but there are challenges in the warehousing. Now, one of the important challenges in the warehousing is the use of height, because we are not in a position to use the full height of the warehouse in terms of bag cargo. The bag cargo in terms of like probably fertilizer, after 7-8 it becomes that the bag will get torn. 7-8 heaps ke baad. Similarly, that we try to, unless we do the palletization, palletization, it will not be possible to deal with this. We went for racking arrangements also, but they were not very successful because of the cost involved, and at times because this was helpful where dirty cargo and clean cargo were being handled in the same areas. The future warehousing, it certainly depends on the what is called a category warehouse, where the trucks, where the parking area is adequate, location is good, the flooring is such that the MHEs can work efficiently, the heights can be utilized. It should be a smart in terms of technology, IT-based systems. The future is very bright with warehousing, especially with the e-commerce, and around the major hubs, major urban hubs, you will have a lot of potential for the warehousing. In the industrial warehousing also, in the agri warehousing also, all that potential is there. How we are in a position to tap it is more important. The warehousing needs will continue to grow in the post-COVID life of paperless and online contactless working, and adopting the online culture, putting pressure, now I should not say on the retail business, because as the online business grows, retail business will be under pressure. People visiting the malls will be lesser, visiting the departmental stores will be lesser, and whatever it is, in both the cases, warehousing has to be there. Warehousing is the need, and the logistics will depend on the warehousing. With this, I think I covered where railways, warehousing, and COVID-19, and I think the time given also is, I think, we have exceeded that time. But still, if there are any questions, we can certainly look at them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Asthana, for that insight into warehousing and its pivotal role in logistics. We could now take up the questions being sought or clarification by the participants.
Hello. Yeah, ma'am, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Ma'am, there's a lot of appreciation that has come for the railways and Monica ma'am's presentation, but we haven't received any queries so far. So I think if you have any queries for Asthana sir or for Monica ma'am, you could probably raise them.
I think they were very comprehensive. All the presentations are very comprehensive and very detailed and very insightful. So I think we should now close it, since we've almost reached our lunchtime in India. And I would like to extend a big thank you to Mr. Behel, Richa and her Exhibition India's team for organizing this webinar. And thank you all for those who have heard patiently, and along with all your appreciation. And thank you, Mr. Shanti Narayan, Monica, and Mr. Asthana. Thank you all very much.